Welcome to Bear, brought to you by Giddy, the world's largest sexual health platform. Did you feel like you had comprehensive sex ed growing up in Texas? What has sexual health meant for you now that you're a grown up and learning all these things? Because I feel like it's a really big conversation too. Like we see all the different ways that people can protect themselves now, but it's still like not a big conversation people are having. So what does that journey look like for you?
I'm like, this is a lot. And like, let me know if this is too much. But so growing up, we had sex ed in school, but it's like middle school, you're like, ha ha, he he. And I feel like it mainly promoted abstinence or making sure you used a condom. Mm-hmm. And so again, growing up as not knowing anyone that was gay, actually, I really didn't start asking these questions till I was going to move to Austin to film. I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like I might actually have sex with a man. But I'm like, what does that look like? Like, what is even like, this is embarrassing. But I'm like, what counts as sex with the men, because to me, it's like you're taught a male and female having sex is, like penetration. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, and so I remember so thankful. This is also crazy. People were like, you came out in Arkansas. I'm like, I know, of all places, but Fayetteville, Arkansas, and the university was very accepting. That's where I like came out. So I had an amazing on-campus doctor, and she, like this poor older woman, like I asked her all the questions and she answered like, she didn't hesitate. Mm-hmm. But I remember like PrEP. No one has ever talked to me about that. One of my students, this is so embarrassing. One of my students talked about it in passing. And so in my doctor's appointment, I was like, so I just want to know about like, what is this PrEP? Should I be on it? And she was like, very, she advocates for PrEP, but she's like, obviously this is like, I'm not putting anything on you. But I was like, that's so amazing. But no one ever taught me about PrEP. And that's something even moving here, people have been like, before you start hooking up, you probably should look into this. I'm like, I actually was told about that. But like, I was like, so when a guy hooks up with a guy, like, do you wear a condom still? Because to me, it was like, that was the thing for a guy and a girl. And so there's just all these questions because I didn't know the answers. And I don't think they do teach that. Even this conversation now, I'm like, I hope, which I'm sad to think like it's probably not, but we do. I hope education is educating our like queer young people who are going to hook up. Because these are questions I wish there was a class or wish someone could have told me.
Learning about PrEP and safety and what does that look like for you? Because it was like you learned it later in life because it was like you're saying, straight sex, condom, or abstinence. But queer sex, I feel like is so different. What was that conversation with your doctor like?
So I really only had 2 like appointments before I had to move to Texas. So I was like very limited. And so I felt like I covered the basics on like PrEP. But honestly, everything else I've learned has been through like YouTube, Google searches. I'm like, don't look at my search history. But Google and then friends I'm making that are gay. But it's also, you have to make friends because, it's awkward to be like, oh, we just met. Like, by the way, like, so do I use a condom when I'm having sex?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so it has been hard. Like, I still have tons of questions. I'm glad we're having this because now I'm like, Keauno, you need to know these answers. People are probably going to ask you. And so it's been a lot of self-research. I'm excited for platforms like Giddy, and then I've been thankful, like, I got my first douche in the mail from someone, and they had a whole guide on, like, how to use it, what to use it for, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is information I'm like, I wish it was more accessible or public, but I feel like as time's going by, people and organizations are promoting it more. Does that make sense?
It does. And for that, like, what do you think is lacking for queer youth, right? Like, if we're talking about like growing up and like not coming out till whatever age we are, I worked at a nonprofit that served queer youth for a little while. And that was a big conversation we were having of like, how do you protect yourself? And so what do you feel like needs to be added to the conversation for queer youth about sex ed?
And this might be being done already. I mean, I'm coming from a place where there is like nothing and not knowing anything. But to me, the basics is one, like my talk, I'm going to use something from my talk therapy. I also promote talk therapy. That's how I ended up coming out. And I didn't even go to therapy because I was gay. It just kind of came out in conversation. I was like, oh, okay, this is the underlying thing. But she said, I remember to me, I hope you have multiple partners. I was like, multiple partners? And I'm like, me, like, Southern Texas boy, like, I thought I'm only going to have one and then we're going to get married. But it was the first person to tell me, like, I hope you have multiple partners. And that's when I realized, like, even for straight, well, I feel like culture is kind of changing, but there's kind of this curtain. But it's like, no, people are hooking up. People are hooking up all the time. People now, and also, well, I don't know if I should say this. There's more than 2 people in most bedrooms now. But, you know, like, and it's just like common, like, and so I'm just saying, I wish like it was talked about, like, you're gonna hook up. When you hook up, this is how you be safe, or this is what you should be looking for. Because even now I think about like testing. I don't have all the answers on like when you should be tested, what you should be tested, you know? So I feel like, sorry, I'm long-winding your question, but my answer would be 1, you're going to hook up. You know, you're probably going to hook up with more than one person. And this is how you do it, and this is how you do it to be safe. Yeah. And if you're not safe, this is like, you know, steps or things you should look forward to.